Oh, Bosarge, it's been too long since I heard that sound. I'm ready to get on the field right now.
Man, I'm pumped.
It's
Man,
another
I'm
season.
ready.
Garnet Roost is back. I'm Nino Brown, CFB Nation. That's my guy, Brian Bosarge, Deep Fried Draft. How we doing, buddy?
Man, we are doing great. We are what? 4 days until 3 days until kickoff. Oh man, I'm ready because this first game might be one of the few on the docket we're not going to have to sweat. So yeah, well, I'm ready for it, man.
Before we get in the rapid fire, I'm going to hit you with one rapid fire question off chalk. Last year we had 6 games, 6 episodes before we got sour. Over under 6 before we go sour.
Let's see. They're starting out at least 2-1, right? So at minimum, depending on how the Kentucky game goes. So I don't know. Let's maybe week 6 again.
We'll see.
We're going to try not to, man, but God,
it is what it is. All right, I'm going to hit you with some 4 rapid fire questions before we get into the season. You ready?
Let's go.
All right, Jakari Moore and Aaron Parks are already injured. Last season, the Gamecocks lost 6 offensive linemen. Over under 5 lost offensive linemen this year.
We're going to go under, man. And I'll say this. I feel like the depth is better than it was last year, right? So, I mean, we got that going for us, but it doesn't hurt, especially like Aaron Parks. I think they were probably looking for him to maybe shore up one of those interior positions. So it's hard to lose him right out of the gate. What is the extent? Is it a long-term deal or is he just out for this week?
I think it might be the first 2, be back week 3. So
okay.
It's not a good way to start off the year.
No, because that left guard spot is, which I'm assuming is where they would have had him man. And so that's kind of the spot you look at on the offensive line where you have some questions. Well, you have some questions on all of them, to be honest. We all watched them play last year. But that is the one spot that I think they need a little more shoring up. So hopefully he gets back and can contribute. But we'll see how Kamar Bell does in that first game.
Me and KT bump heads a lot when we do this. I think it's kind of a useless stat sometimes about return production. Yes, we returned 60% of our offensive line, which was trash last season. Ooh, we allowed 39 sacks. Ooh, they all come back. Yay! You know what I mean? So that kind of kills me a little bit. But hopefully we're not in that boat this year, and we can kind of right the wrongs. This one I think we both like. The Gamecocks have 14 players on our friends, the Senior Bowl watch list. Who is the most surprising, and who would you like to see most? As we were spoiled last year with Leggett and Rattler.
I'll say this: the one that maybe surprised me the most of the guys on the Senior Bowl watch list was the wide receiver. The Brown? Miami, Ohio transfer, Gage
Laverdine. Yeah.
Laverdine. He's a little tiny Mike guy. So I don't know that's going to transition well. I mean, I no offense, but I see him. I see Hula Bowl guy. Mm-hmm. No offense. I love the
Shine
Hula Bowl,
Bowl, maybe.
Guys, yeah. But he doesn't scream Senior Bowl guy. Of all the guys on this list that we could see in Mobile, and there are many that I am a huge fan of. I guess one that's not on here that's kind of surprising is Nicky Manwari.
Yeah.
He is draft eligible, and those guys are eligible to play, but not on that list. Obviously, that's not the be-all, end-all. But the one guy that is on the list that I absolutely think will thrive in Mobile, and I think his personality will be great for us to talk to, is linebacker Debo Williams.
I knew it.
I want that guy down here because, man, can you imagine him in those coverage one-on-one drills, man? I think he's going to shine. Or those pass rush one-on-ones, man. He is going to kill the one-on-ones in Mobile if he can get down here. And got the great size. I think he's going to test well in the offseason. 6'1", 2. I mean, Debo Williams is a guy I would love to see down here in Mobile.
Oh, I would absolutely be ecstatic if he was in Mobile. He was a dude down, I think it was the last 5 or 6 games down the stretch. He carried that front seven, right? We were salivating at the mouth for a guy to show up and cause pressure, and he was the only guy doing it for us last year down the stretch. So I think he would excel. He could have like that, like Ivan Pace type
Yeah.
at the Senior Bowl. So
Yeah.
I would love it. All right. FanDuel has Gamecocks win total at the over on the 5.5. If head coach Shane Beamer can't get South Carolina to a bowl game, what's the temperature of that coaching seat?
I will say this: I have bet the over.
Okay.
I have done that. But if they can't get to a bowl game this year, and that schedule's tough, they may not.
Right.
I mean, they could actually be a better team than the 5-7 they went last year, and still not make a bowl game. As bad as the schedule's rough. I don't think he gets fired. Okay. I'll say that, but he will enter 2025 season on the hottest of hot seats. I think you might see some guys out the door, portaling out that we don't want to see.
We don't have my guy's spectacles.
I would not leave anything to surprise, but if they go 5-7 after 4 seasons, he's a 500 coach.
Right. So
it's 500 even.
It's average.
Yeah. I mean, he'll get a 5th year unless they just completely shit the bed.
Right. So if you're talking about shit the bed, like a 3-win,
3-9, something like that, where you only beat
teams you were supposed to beat.
I'll say this. I think at worst they're a 4. Hold on. I think they're a 4-8 team at worst, like absolute worst. That means they beat Vanderbilt, Akron, Old Dominion, and Wofford.
I remember we spoke, and you had them beating Oklahoma. Do you still have them beating Oklahoma?
Talk to me when we play Oklahoma.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Let me see where they're at.
All right. I'm with you right there because I think, I need to see, and I'm ready for the growing pains of Lenore Sellers. So it is what it is. I know it's not going to be all peaches and bubblegum, you know what I mean, coming out of the gate. So I know there will be growing pains.
We're going to be talking about a lot of peaches and bubblegum next week. I can tell you that.
Yes, we will. And our last one is, and you mentioned him a little bit. I believe he is, but I want your answer. Is Nick Emeagwari a top 5 safety in college football?
Not only do I think he's a top 5 safety in college football, I think he's the second best NFL draft prospect at safety. In this draft class right now. Behind
top 5.
Behind Malachi Starks.
Yeah.
I think he's the second best safety in this draft class right now. I'm not saying somebody else can't emerge, but I think right now he's a top 2 safety in this draft class.
Good hands. Good field awareness, can play on the ball, can play on
injury history is gonna
is
the thing that's gonna weigh him down.
But it never. See, the thing is with him though, his injuries never lingered. Like when he came back, he was back to 100% and effective. So
it hasn't been anything major.
Exactly, and like I said, as soon as he comes back, he's an instant factor in that secondary. So I believe he's, like I said, top 5, not 5, and I'm with you, not 3 or 4. So I love it. Let's get into it. Norcell is QB1. We all knew.
You called it, Nino.
2 years ago.
You've been on this guy 2 years now, which is amazing to me. It took me a while to buy in. You tried to sell me on this for a straight calendar year, I believe.
Yep.
And I was like, let's wait and see. Well, I've waited. I've seen enough. I think Lenore Sellers is. He said it's going to be some downs this year as he learns. I think the highs are going to be higher than the lows are going to be low.
I remember you, and I believe I put the image out. It was quoted that it's a possibility at the end of his collegiate career, he could be better than what Cam Newton was in college football. You still on that train?
I think so. I mean, his size and skill set, it's similar, man. It's so similar. His speed in the open field, we're going to see it. You're
going to see a lot of it.
Nobody's going to watch the game because it's going to be up against so many better games probably on Saturday.
Yeah.
But watch them highlights. and you're going to see it against Old Dominion, I think, on Saturday. He's going to smoke that defense coming up. I'm getting ahead of myself before we get the predictions that game.
Yeah, I know. I just can't wait for him to come out the gun and just leave Henderson in his dust.
They brought in Auburn and Oregon transfer Robbie Ashford to be everybody thought it was competition. I think me and you both kind of never thought this. I do like the Robbie Ashford gimmick, though, that I think they're going to be able to utilize, like Auburn did a year ago.
Just run. You come in and have, a package of
with a threat of a pass.
Yeah.
He's more of a threat of a pass as that quarterback than, like, say, DK Joyner was last year and in years past, I think. So, and he's faster.
Yes.
So there's that. So I'm anxious to see it.
All right. We're on to our next topic of the show, which I think the waves might be crashing in the harbor. This Harbour Watch. What happened? I thought we were going to be going forward here, my friend. I feel like we're at a stalemate.
Well, we kind of are at a stalemate, but for I guess a good reason. I mean, last year it took him till week 7 before he ever even got on the field.
Right.
Ended up catching 12 passes, averaged about 20 yards a catch, had a touchdown. But not a lot of production, but started almost every game the back half of the season. But just the thing is, Leggett was getting a 70% target share. So, it wasn't a whole lot of that to go around. But
there wasn't much time either.
Right. But but normally speaking, you would say, okay, he'll have spring practice. We'll get him in the offense. We'll get him caught up. Well, he didn't have spring practice. Why? Because he's a world-class athlete. He was running track for South Carolina and ran a 10-1 in the 100.
Dumb.
Ran a 20.2 in the 200 for their track team. He was a second-team All-American track this year at the NCAA level and qualified for the Olympic trials.
Ridiculous.
In both events. Now, he's smart enough to know that he wasn't going to make the U.S. Olympic team in those events. He probably doesn't get out of the heat. I watched the Olympic trials, the U.S. Olympic trials. He wasn't getting out of the heats, which is fine. He knew that.
Blew him out.
In both of them, no doubt. And he knew that. So he pulls out of the trials and goes and starts working on getting in football shape. Because he's not in football shape. He's in track shape. So he starts working on getting in football shape. He's there now, but we'll see. And we're going to get to the depth chart here in a little bit. And in the next subject, talk about, I'm a little slightly concerned. But he's the first player ever in the history of the Bruce Feldman freak list to be number 1 back-to-back years.
He's got more of a freak the second year than he did the first year, I feel like.
He just turned 19. He's 6'5", 242. And runs probably in the 4.3s.
Yeah. Find a way, dude. Figure it out, Beamer. Figure it out. Find a way to get him the
Figure
ball.
it out, or he's going to be one of them guys in the portal that I was talking about earlier.
And I had conversations with some people on X about it, and they're like, is it just a farce or is the talent there? And I'm like, I think it's more so of the fact they haven't figured out where to use him. Freshman year, he was supposed to be a tight end, right? And then last year, he was halfway through the year, then it was, we'll use him as a wide receiver. And last year, I don't understand if they know what to do with the kid.
We talked about that. We talked about that last year too. That's an issue. But let me say this: that coach is no longer here.
So maybe it's improvement now.
So we'll see. I am anxious to see what Mike Furry does in the wide receiver room more than Justin Stepp, who I think there was some issues there with him and coach there.
I agree. I think there's more options, and I think it's a perfect segue to get into the Logan's outlook on the wide receiver.
Not to mention, you just hired a sitting head coach to come in and be your wide receiver coach with Furry. He was a head coach at the D2 level, and you bring him in. So we'll see. I think. But you mentioned Dawal Loggins, his second year as the OC. He had a quote the other day I read that they know they can't replace the production of Xavier Leggett that he had last year. It was one of the most productive seasons in school history. Mm-hmm. So they're going to basically take the money ball approach. I don't like it.
No.
But they basically have 6 receivers, their top 6, and Tyshawn Russell's kind of the next man up. Amari Huggins Bruce was also in that next man up, but he just bailed, went back to Louisville. You said to be a walk-on.
Yeah, he has to be a walk-on.
Wild to me, but sure. But he couldn't crack the top 6. So
take that however you want to take that.
But the top 6 right now, in no particular order, are Jared Brown, who transferred over from Coastal Carolina, Nick Harbour, Delvon Campbell from Nevada, transferred from Nevada, Dre Jacobs transferred from Florida State. You got Luke Doty, who has finally given up on being a quarterback, and he's now a full-time wide receiver, and Gage Larvadan, transferred from Miami, Ohio, and the true freshman that I know you love, Mazio Bennett, also in that mix. They're all 6 on the 2 deep.
So you're telling me that, and I'm not trying to knock the kid, but Higgins Bruce couldn't beat out a former quarterback.
That's what I'm saying.
Depth shot. Okay.
Yeah. And I like Tyshawn Russell as the 7th man there. I mean, they said they'll carry 9 on the travel roster, but they said the other 3 are going to have to be teams contributors. So we'll see who those other 2 end up being.
You have a redshirt freshman that they have lined up on the depth chart as a starter. Dre Jacobs, as of right now, is listed as the starter in the Z slot over Russell. I'm concerned about the size of these receivers. Outside of Nick Harbour, you don't got any big boys out there. They're all 5'10".
Well, Campbell's 6'4", 220. That's
right,
what
but he's what? 7 or 6 on the depth chart.
He's listed as or with Nick Harper behind Jared Brown.
Right, and that would be for the X.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like if you want to put him all in one bunch, he's probably like 6 or 7. So it's like, okay, yeah, that's the biggest guy you got outside of Harbour. You don't even know how to use Harbour, right? So there's my concern, and we'll get more into the matchup this week that I have concerns with there. I truly believe, and I've been saying it for a little bit, I think Mazio Bennett is going to be, if they can't figure out the Nick Harbour thing, I think Bennett is going to be the benefactor this year of having that mobile quarterback that can throw off platform. I think this kid is going to, I know Lavadine's going to be the guy. I don't know if he can, I just don't know. You're going from Miami, Ohio, bro. Like, and that's not to knock Miami, Ohio, but we're going from what, the MAC to the SEC? It's a little different competition there.
Let's stay with Harbour 1 second. Do you think he is better on the outside or as the big slot?
Him personally, I think he'd probably be better as the big slot. But I think for this team, I want him on the outside.
They need him on the outside, but I think he's better as the big slot.
100%.
There's not a safety in the country that is going to cover him one-on-one.
Or a linebacker. Not a chance in hell. Yeah. So now you got to cheat to cover the guy. So you're putting 2 in the slot, which is going to give you one guy one-on-one on the sideline. As long as Marcel doesn't give him the ball, it's a straight shot. I'm concerned as much as you are with this wide receiver room.
There's a lot of questions that need to be answered that we're probably not going to get answered until next week.
Yeah, I always have concerns with offenses that have a lot of moving pieces. Florida State, as for example, last week had a shit ton of moving pieces. You're replacing both wide receivers, a quarterback, a running back, or tight end. We're almost in that same boat outside of the tight end. Simon's back, but you're replacing your whole wide receiver core, your whole running back core, and you have a new quarterback. There's way too many moving pieces for me to feel comfortable heading into week 1, especially when who should be your wide receiver 1, I don't even know if he's in 100% football shape right now.
Right. I was wrong, by the way, when I said there would be 2-1. I thought Akron was the third game, but it's not.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
But we'll get to that. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. So we talked about that and Harbour being listed behind Jared Brown. I just can't make it make sense.
No.
On the depth chart. But let me say this about Harbour. I promise everybody, this isn't the Nick Harbour Roost, but we just want to see this guy.
We were just waiting patiently.
But something I found this the most fascinating thing, and now I want to see it on this entire depth chart. He's listed second behind Juju McDowell as a kick returner.
Ooh. Okay.
I'm trying to imagine that big man with that speed in the open field.
Like a gazelle.
Getting a chance.
You know, I'm with it. I'm all for it. But don't get him hurt.
Right. And that's the thing.
So let Juju catch the punts and the kicks, and let's let Nick just catch the ball from Lenore Sellis. All right, let's get into some other depth chart observations here. Talk to me about the left tackle position.
We could have a true freshman starting at left tackle this week. Josiah Thompson, one of their best or highest rated recruits this year, probably their second highest rated recruit after Dylan Stewart. Listed at starting at left tackle with Tree Babalade, who started a lot of games on the right side last year due to the injury to Kason Henry, who got that right tackle job back. He's the starting right tackle. There's no or by his name. He's the starting right tackle. And Vershawn Lee has no or by his name. He's the starting center, which I think is his best position. But he had to move out of there last year because of all the injuries. He ended up having to play guard. He had to play tackle at times last year as well. But he's going to be the center. And Kamar Bell, I'm assuming he transferred from somewhere, right? He transferred from Florida Atlantic.
Kamar Bell?
Yes.
Auburn. He started at Florida Atlantic. Was that Auburn? Or vice versa. Was that Auburn? Went to Florida Atlantic?
Okay. Now he's here. He's the starter at left guard, unopposed. They have an or at right guard, but I think we both agree it's going to be the North Carolina Central transfer, Torricelli Simpkins III.
Yes.
I believe we'll get to start over veteran Trevon Baugh, who's been here a couple of years now. Just he's good depth. I don't think he's a starter. I think Simpkins ends up getting a start there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Simpkins, I was so out on Babalay last year. There was so many games where he was just like in the red for me. And then there was, he would show up a little bit, and for every good, there was 3 or 4 bad. So I'm out on him. Hopefully, Josiah Thompson taking the start will give him a little bit more time to season up and be a depth piece later on. But I think Thompson is an absolute stud. This is a 5-star, right? Is he 5? Or is he 4? Oh, he's a 5.
Depending on the service that you follow. But
right, yeah. So he's right there. You know what I mean? Top 100 guy in the class. He's going to be a difference maker for them off the rip, and they need it.
Unlike last year, I think the depth on the front 7 is outstanding. Like they should, in theory, be able to rotate several guys at all 7 spots on the front 7, all 6 spots, dependent 6 spots, if you will.
Yeah.
On the front 7, front 6. You bring in Kyle Kennard from Georgia Tech on the edge, along with bring Gilbert Edmond back, who went to Florida State, came back this year, along with Desmond Umazulu, who played some last year. And on the other edge spot, JT Gear, who just never really got last year because of injuries. He's going to rotate with a guy, I think, who is outstanding in Brian Thomas Jr. I think he really came on last year. And then sitting there just waiting to get unleashed is top 10 in the class, Dylan Stewart off the edge, 6'6", 248-pound true freshman. And then on the inside, man, you've got Tonka Hemingway and TJ Sanders. And then behind them is Alabama transfer Monkel Goodwine. And then over at the nose, you got Boogie Huntley and then DeAndre Jules, who came over from Pitt. I mean, that is a recipe to be good for an entire game in the SEC week in, week out. Being able to, everybody stays healthy, rotating those guys in. I mean, can you imagine unleashing Dylan Stewart in the fourth quarter of a game if you got the lead?
Oh, yeah, when the line is hurting and gasping for air, and this dude's just coming full steam at him.
Fresh legs.
I think we're going to see Dylan Stewart in games before the fourth quarter.
Oh, I agree. But I'm just trying to, like, say you're holding on to a 3-point lead against Oklahoma late in the game.
Yeah.
You know, and you're turning this guy loose. That's going to be fun. And then the two linebacker spots. We talked about Debo. I think he's a top SEC linebacker this year. Behind him is Bangali Kamara, who also transferred from Pitt, and then Mo Kaba, who's coming off injury after injury after injury, but he's such a solid veteran, a team leader. Everybody loves him. You know, he's there. And then at your Mike position, Bam Martin Scott is a guy we talked about a lot last year.
Yep.
And then you bring in the leading tackler from Charlotte, Demetrius Knight, comes in and to split time with Bam Martin Scott. So
I love Bam Martin Scott and Debo together. I think that's going to be a great combination in the linebacker room. You mentioned the depth, dude. We were on hands and knees praying for pressure out of the front, defensive line last year. We couldn't get anything, right? Then Tonka kind of asserted himself a little bit down the stretch, but then he got hurt, I believe, as well. So it was like we were struggling. We were struggling for. I think Kennard is going to give you that off the end. I think Tonka will give you that run stopping capability in the middle. I love the linebackers. That front 6, 7, however they want to run it, I think can put pressure. And we have the secondary. And now you're going to talk about my guy. He's going to be I think he's going to be in a good spot.
Well, before I get to your guy, I want to get to your other guy that you couldn't shut up about last year. I personally feel better about the linebackers this year than I did last year with Pup Howard and Stone Blanton, who are both gone to other SEC programs. I think Pup went to Florida.
Yep.
And Stone Blanton went to Mississippi State.
Correct.
I think those two guys, I think the South Carolina is much more athletic at the linebacker spot than they were with those two. And I think they're in a better spot this year than they would have been if those two guys had stayed.
Yeah, I must have mentioned his name about 100 times last year, Pup Howard, and I don't know if they just couldn't figure it out or he couldn't figure it out or whatever it was, but, was trying to put the triangle in a square hole. That doesn't work. So I wish them both, luck in where they go. From what I read, Pup is like really grasped onto the Florida defense and kind of leading that linebacker room.
I think it was a coaching issue here or him not
taking it well
to communicate or whatever with it. I think there was a breakdown there, which is why he never saw the field.
No.
I mean,
and if he did, it was
Stone Blanton played, but he just played while wearing concrete shoes. So,
all right.
Tell me what I'm telling lies, Nino.
No, I'm not. All I hear is facts, my friend.
But yeah, you mentioned your guy. You love Jalen Kilgore, man, and he's listed as the starting nickel right now. And behind him are two true freshmen, so he needs to not get hurt.
Right. He does have his brother there, though. And he brought in his brother Gerald.
And Gerald Kilgore is currently listed as a reserve free safety with David Boosie, a true freshman. I am not concerned with the two safety positions of the nickel. I have no concerns with Nicky Manwari at free safety. I have no concerns with DQ Smith at strong safety, as long as he's not trying to cover one-on-one with Tulu Griffin. As long as we can avoid those situations, we're fine with DQ Smith. The corner spots concern me. The
You don't like
outside
your
corners.
fortune teller's not too good.
O'Donnell Fortune is okay. He's
best.
on the Senior Bowl watch list. I was
why.
surprised by it.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised by that. And I thought Judge Collier, who's listed as a potential starter on the other side, had some flashes, but I am wondering if he holds off Bakari Swain.
Yeah.
Who had a great spring.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if we don't end up seeing Bakari Swain end up taking the lion's share of the reps there at the outside corner spot opposite of Fortune. I don't think Fortune has a challenger on the other side. It's his spot.
Well, I know you don't like Spalding. I know you're not a fan of Spalding.
I do not.
What about Emery Floyd? Do you think he can challenge? No.
That's Fortune's spot.
Yeah.
For better or worse, they're going to ride or die with that cat out there.
I'm going with Swain as my dark horse kind of creeper in the secondary. I don't trust Judge Collier. What we saw last year in Judge Collier was not very good.
There were flashes.
Yeah, there was a lot of flashes.
There was a lot of bad. You're right.
So, I mean, give the redshirt freshman his time, right? Like you said, he had a good spring and fall camp. They heard there's a little bit of buzz around him. It's kind of like an open room in that right side. So maybe it's his turn.
Last thing on the depth chart we're going to talk about, because we're replacing Mitch Jeter, who was a very reliable kicker. He transferred to Notre Dame. That might be the one transfer that nobody talks about because he's a kicker that might end up being the biggest bite him in the ass guy they lost out of the portal. But Jeter's off to Notre Dame. Alex Herrera, been around a while. Has been at South Carolina as a walk-on for a while, probably on scholarship now. He held off Mason Love, who's a true freshman this year that he recruited. This is an issue.
Yeah.
This is an issue. Punter is not an issue. Kai Kroger is the best punter in the country.
Yeah.
Hunter Rogers is the best long snapper in the country. I said it. Those two may get Rogers won't get drafted. Kroger may get drafted.
Once we roasted him last year, he was money after that.
He may get drafted. Hunter Rogers is going to play at an NFL camp next year as the long snapper.
Okay.
I think he could end up at the Senior Bowl as one of the two long snappers down there. But the kicker spot is concerning.
And for a team that may need to put up 3 more often than 7, we're going to have to figure that out.
The thing is, with Mitch Jeter, you knew inside 40 yards, if you couldn't convert, you had 3.
Right.
We won't know that
until
we know that.
Yeah, and it's going to take more than one game, I think, for us to be confident.
Yes. Yeah.
Speaking of more than one game, it's about that time when we kind of look ahead onto Old Dominion.
We've gone long here before we even got to the game preview. I didn't realize we'd been going this long. When we got to talking, man, it's the first episode. I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, it's the first episode. We're back. We had a lot of information and opportunities in this offseason that built up that we had to kind of get off our chest. But this first one, they're facing Old Dominion, and I think this is going to be a topic that might spark a little fire here. Jason Henderson, all right, 170 tackles last season, but only 52 total. And I know you kind of put it out there in the green room when we talked. Is he just the stat patter, maybe a pile jumper? And it tends to kind of seem that way. And I've kind of read a little bit that the buzz at home is there's a little bit different in the numbers and the splits from what happens at home and what happens in away. But when it comes to getting in the backfield and causing havoc, he doesn't need any help. I mean, this guy had 20 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. He could be a problem for the Gamecocks week 1 if our O-line is not clicking. What are your thoughts on Henderson?
First of all, if you watch the tape, he's a bit of a pile jumper. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Just from the tape.
I agree.
And the last time you seen a guy put up these tackle numbers was your guy from BC. Luke Kuechly.
Right.
Luke Kuechly. Luke Kuechly wasn't no pile jumper, son.
No, it's not even the
Luke
same.
Kuechly had 170 tackles. Luke Kuechly had about
100 solo.
100 solos.
Yeah, if not
ridiculous.
more. Yeah,
he's one of the best, if not the best collegiate linebacker we've seen in 25 years.
Exactly.
Jason Henderson is not Luke Kuechly at all. He's a good player. I don't think he covers well. And I think if South Carolina gets him in space with the tight ends, that we didn't even talk about the tight ends. I think Joshua Simon's going to have a big year.
He's going to need to because, he's going to be that. I think we need a safety blanket for Sellers, and that should
and
be
Brady Hunt as well. I think also the Ball State transfer also in line to basically. I think Brady Hunt's going to get the numbers that Simon got last year. Simon's going to get the numbers that Knox got last year.
Okay.
I don't, and they're talking about the true freshman Michael Smith's going to play like a lot this year. I read that yesterday. Yeah,
really.
They loved what he's done in fall camp, and at 6'6", 255, I want to see it.
Yes, bring the big body boy in. We need to use him.
But to get back to Jason Henderson, I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a great player. I don't think he's a first 2-day draft pick if and when he comes out. I think he kind of reminds me of who was the guy from Temple? Matakevich. I think he's a similar vein of that guy where I think he'll have a long special teams career in the NFL. I don't think he's going to be a starting defensive player in the NFL, but at the collegiate level, he's fine. But I'm not as concerned.
Here's my thing. With the way the portal has been over the past few years, and the way the SEC and the Big Ten rotate linebackers, a guy that's putting up annually 150 to 140 tackles, you would think a big name school would want to target that. That guy didn't even have it. I don't know if that guy even got a buzz or a phone call to hit the portal.
Didn't leave, did he?
Yeah. So, and this is back-to-back years with over 140 tackles. So, to me, that speaks a little bit of volumes to what we got there. But I think it's something we have to watch out for. We can't just let him be unnoticed and let him, shoot the gaps uncovered. But if he gets in the backfield, he could be a problem. A guy that I think could be a problem, because we mentioned the size of our wide receivers, how we're a little bit undersized, and it could affect guys like Gage Laverdine or Jared Brown, who's only 5'11". Rashid Reason, 5'10", 170 pounds, right? He's a senior. He played in only 8 games last year. Had 7 pass breakups and an interception. So you're talking about a guy that in every single game he played was on ball and was disruptive. And he played well in what is it? The famous Toastery Bowl? Was it the Pop Top Bowl? Right? Which I'm pretty sure that's what it was, right?
That was the one that it was supposed to be the Bahamas Bowl, but they were working on the stadium so they could play it there. So they played it in Charlotte instead.
I gotcha. All right. So I think this kid could be an issue for us, especially with the inexperience of Lenora Sells. I think the kid's great. A lot of moving parts. And a kid who's known to be on ball, got good hands, could be an issue. May not be. I understand you're playing Sun Belt to SEC, so the competition is different. But we're talking about a kid that, in a small sample size, every game that he was in was a problem. Offensively, I don't think the Monarchs are going to be anything crazy. Okay. But Grant Wilson's returning. And he's probably the only solid, concrete piece for this offense. He played in 12 games last year for the Monarchs. Close to 60% at 2,100 yards, 17-8 touchdown interception ratio. Really isn't bad, but he brings a dual threat factor in his bag with almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. My question is there enough talent in the wide receiver room with the loss of Romello Murphy to Arizona? He was the guy. I know Deontay Vines comes in from Iowa, and he seems to have developed a connection with Wilson in camp, but could he be that guy, or is the senior slot guy Isaiah Page, who really only had 400 yards and 2 touchdowns last year, emerges as top weapons? And it's, again, tons of questions in the running back and wide receiver room. I feel like Grant Wilson is going to have to be that steady hand for the Monarchs commanding the offense. What are your thoughts there?
I agree. The thing that I say concerns me, it doesn't concern me in the least, not for this game. I got a feeling he's going to be throwing a lot.
We'll be behind.
If you catch my drift.
Yes.
And so we're going to see how steady his hand is. And I mentioned earlier that front four depth
Yes.
is going to wreak havoc.
Could be a problem for
in that second
early.
half for their offensive line, who's not going to be near on the talent level that South Carolina's defensive line is. It's going to be one of those deals. Yeah.
I bet you Dylan Stewart plays early.
Yeah.
Get him the reps while you can, right? In a game where you probably it's not of the same caliber. The reason why I say Grant Wilson is the only solid piece is they lost Kadarius Callaway, who I thought was an absolute huge piece for them last year. He averaged over 7 yards per carry, had 5 touchdowns. You know, the former 4-star goes to Cal, right, leaving the Monarchs. And they also lost Wicks, so they lost their top 2 guys who have both had over 550 yards. They're going to go with a kid coming out of Rutgers who was buried for the last couple of years, and Aaron Young as the RB1. And then another kid that transferred over from Virginia Tech will be the RB2. He was a versatile back out of Coastal High School. You know, now he's going to split time with, like I said, the Virginia Tech guy, and as well as the freshman Devin Roach. I think that the Gamecocks front 7 is probably going to shut this run game down really early and force some guys to throw the ball a lot. That is why I believe we'll see Dylan Stewart early and often there.
Yeah.
And then my last point is, the OC Kevin Decker. He improved this offense a ton with a bunch of fresh new faces and bodies in his first season at ODU. He scored over 100 points more in 23 than did in 22. But he's going to have to pull the rabbit out of a hat again, because I mentioned all the moving parts on this offense. I mean, Decker and Wilson will need to grow together this year for that offense to have success. I don't know if the Monarchs can score, quickly on the Decker. I mean, they did last year. They scored 12 touchdowns in under a minute. 12 touchdown drives in under a minute, and they had a lot of chunk plays. I just don't see that happening against this defense. Like I said, Sun Belt, SEC. The competition is extremely different. I have a funny feeling that Grant Wilson is going to be looking up at the clouds more so than he's going to be looking downfield.
Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of happening there for ODU. They're going to come back, and this game's going to be like a 7-point game this week. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to get sour here after 1 week.
No, we can't talk like that. It's too
I'm
early.
Just saying, but I know. But no, I don't see it. This team was, I think, projected to be the either 5th or 6th
in the Sun Belt.
In the Sun Belt East.
Yes.
The only conference that still uses divisions, by the way.
Yeah. I have a funny feeling that'll be getting done away with very soon.
I don't know. Word I hear not. But
really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We got to that point, my friend. Final predictions for the ODU game. South Carolina is favored by 3 touchdowns. Give me a score.
This is going to be an absolute ass beating. I conservatively put this game at 38-10. My prediction. I think South Carolina can score more than that. I think they can go half 100 in this first game.
Okay.
I will say this. I'm going to go out here right now. Lenora Sellers, 350 all-purpose yards, accounts for 4 touchdowns in this first football game of the season. I said 38-10. I'll stick with that score, but I would not be shocked if they score more than that against Old Dominion. I just think this is complete unleash the beast Saturday.
I hope it is unleash the beast. I was more on a conservative. I do believe we get the W. Like I said, we have a lot of moving parts as well. I trust Lenora Sellers. I don't know if I trust this wide receiver room that well, or Shane Beamer for that fact, to use Harbour correctly. We didn't even talk about the running backs and Rocket Raheem and Oscar Ottaway. I think Ottaway is going to be a huge factor in out of the backfield in the receiving game. Will we see Rocket from 2 years ago, or will we see Rocket from last year? I guess that's something we'll have to see. I had my final score, and I'm going to stick with it. It's nothing sexy, 27-13. And I think they might get lucky on a score, and then you're just going to get a maybe 7 in the first half, and I think that Old Dominion is just gonna long field goals, buddy. Just long 50-yard field goals to keep the points on the board. Maybe because they got good field position on a shortened punt. Although, because it took him what? I want to say 6 games last year before he looked like the guy we knew in Kai Kruger. So it usually takes him a little bit to get his feet underneath him. So he maybe have some short punts here where they might have better field position. I'll maybe move the dial to 30-13. But I think this first week, yes, I want to see the fireworks, but I also want to see them move on both sides of the ball as a cohesive unit.
I'll say this. The line opened at 20.5. It has only gone up a half point. So not a lot of action coming in on this game because there's so many other games.
Right.
So this is the action. But I will say I bet it at 20.5 earlier in the week. That was the lock of the week on the Draft Countdown podcast on Tuesday. So like I said, I think this is complete domination right out of the gate. And they're going to need it because this is a schedule the rest of the way.
Ugh.
At Kentucky, LSU at home, Akron at home, week off, Ole Miss at home, at Alabama, at Oklahoma, Texas A&M at home, at Vandy, Missouri, Wofford, at Clemson. There was another bye week in there I missed.
Yeah.
Or no, that was it.
There's only one off week?
Yeah, just one off week. So
there's some games in that middle stretch there that are a little. Yeah.
I'm waiting to see if the ticket prices come down for the Alabama game. By the way, they're too rich for my blood right now. They come down to an acceptable level, though. I might go.
Yeah, if Alabama loses 1 or 2 games before they come here, that'd be a different story.
Probably.
I mean, before they play in Alabama.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
I don't think I have Alabama losing 3 games this year, at least. So, and that's not out of pocket to say, because their schedule ain't the easiest as well. And like I said, that new turnover in the coaching staff, a lot of new turnover in the player depth chart over there. It'll be interesting. But I do think we get the W in this one. I do believe that we're coming back next week, happy and positive, and we'll be going 2 weeks into it, smiling and giddy.
Yeah. Like I said, we're going to be happy next week. That Kentucky game in week 2 is going to tell a lot about who this team is.
I agree. And I will say this. If you told me right now, just on paper alone, I'm taking Sellers over Vandegrift. In my eyes. I think Sellers brings more overall to the game.
I think those two teams, as far as the SEC goes, I think South Carolina's closer to Kentucky than they are, say, LSU, Ole Miss.
Yep.
I think they're closer to Oklahoma. I still think that than they are LSU and Ole Miss as far as talent was.
All right, I can give you that. That episode's gonna be a long one. That game. The Oklahoma South Carolina game. All right, my man. Week 1 in the books. I'm excited. I think we get that dub to come back next week and talk about it and be a happy show. And we'll be previewing, the Kentucky game and what we go from there. I'm Nino Brown. That's my guy, Brian Bosarge. This is the Garnet Roost on the CFB Nation. We out. Spurs up.